Hello, this is Robert Sibbs, and this is the class Negotiation and Conflict Resolution, and this is my final project presentation. I decided to do my presentation and my final project on the movie called A Time to Kill. It's based on a book by John Grisham. The movie came out in 1996. And I called this presentation A Time to Kill, The Trial of Carl Lee. The movie was about these four characters, these four main characters. Carl Lee was the protagonist, and he was a man that had a daughter, and his 10-year-old daughter, was raped and brutalized, and she was left for dead in the movie. And he subsequently took revenge on the people that did it, and so he's going to trial. And so this is why I call this the trial of Carl Lee. And Jake Tyler, which is played by Matthew McConaughey, is his defense attorney. Samuel L. Jackson played Carl Lee, and the prosecuting attorney was Rufus Buckley, played by Kevin Spacey. And Ellen Rourke is played by Sandra Bullock, who is a researcher, and she is a pivotal person and a critical component on Jake Tyler's navigating, doing research and gathering information to be able to negotiate the conflict successfully. Most of the film consists of both the prosecuting attorney and the attorney for the defense gathering information and research about how to best the other before the trial or the negotiation starts. So in Barbara Corvette, her textbook that we read, Conflict Management, A Practical Guide to Developing Negotiation Strategies, one of the strategies she talked about is found on page 196, where I quoted here. It says, preparation requires research, careful thought and analysis, and creativity. It occurs prior to the commencement of the parties' designated negotiation meeting. So they did that. So before the trial ever started, they went into high gear, gathering information. They were gathering research. They were doing research on the defense's professional consultants, and the defense attorney did research on the prosecuting attorneys, professional consultants, to try to dismantle their negotiating points. Because one of the things that we discussed is expert witnesses. Corvette also says in her book on page 139, it is nearly impossible to avoid ultimately deferring to expert information and support. So they had to be able to come up with a creative strategy to dismantle the credibility of the experts in the trial. In the project, I'm going to be looking at personality and behavioral, how this is a component to the conflict, how this is a component to the negotiation process, and how did the personality and behaviors of people influence others. There was overt racism down there, and how each side of the divide treated each other was critical to fueling the hotbed of controversy and the hotbed of this high-profile court case. And number two is the communication, the different kinds of communication strategies that were used by the individuals. You look at different strategies, how the prosecuting attorney was talking to the defense attorney, and how the prosecuting attorney was talking to his other lawyers and his paralegals, and how the prosecuting attorney was talking to the judge, how the judge was talking to the prosecuting attorney, how the defense attorney was talking to the prosecuting attorney and to the judge and to the client. And so all of these communication norms came into play in this. Conflict resolution is another component, and how effective were various individuals in managing conflict. There was a couple of critical ones that I want to bring out in my project. One was when the NAACP came to take over the case from Matthew McConaughey's character, Jake Tyler. And so this one, there was conflict here, and they did it masterfully the way they did that. And they flipped the script on them, so to speak, that made them have funding when they were almost out of money. So it was really a good example of conflict management. Next, we'll look at the negotiation process. And considering the components of the negotiation process, we'll look at those as preparation. We talked about that. Introduction. That was a great introduction in the beginning of both of them had a great opening to their opening their case. They're stating their case in the beginning of the trial. The initiation was good, intensification, but the closing was masterfully done by Matthew McConaughey's character, Jake Tyler, one of the best in cinematic history, I think. And how effective were these individuals in applying these stages in the process. So all of them had some great components and great negotiating. They were really good negotiators, and their process was great. Now, leadership. What is the next one? Leadership. What leadership skills did individuals exhibit, and how did these skills influence the conflict management and negotiating process? We're going to talk about that. They did a great job of that. They were steering the ship. Each of them were steering the ship, and when they came up to an obstacle, they were able to overcome that. Their leadership skill came to the forefront, and they were able to manage. Even some Matthew McConaughey's character was in some really a lot of personal situations with his marriage. His house got burned down. So all of these things came into play, and his leadership was able to rise to the occasion. Number two is the last one is ethics and Christ-centered worldview. What ethical considerations did individuals encounter, and how were they in alignment or not with Christ-centered worldview? There was one thing that I really appreciated in this, the Christ-centered worldview, where Matthew McConaughey's character was confronted by Carl Lee, Samuel L. Jackson's character, about how their friendship was only surface friendship, and how he confronted them that they aren't really friends because they don't visit each other, their kids don't know each other. And I really think that that's an ethical issue that we really need to consider. Are we really doing what Christ says, or do we just collaborate and come together at church? So this is really a critical thing that I loved how he brought that out. And at the end of the movie, Matthew McConaughey's character, Jake Tyler, came over to their house, and they came, him and his family, and they visited it. So he made a change in his lifestyle because of that conversation. This is a picture of my daughter, Nikosha. That's how you say her name, Nikosha. And I think about her when I watch this movie. I wonder what I would do. If I was in Samuel L. Jackson's situation, what I would do. And that's the main conflict in this trial, was the question, was this incident a time to kill? And it's really, that's the conflict in that question, when his daughter was brutalized, and she, because of her brutalization, she was unable to have children. And so all of this is part of this conflict that's part of this movie. The backdrop of this film, it was Mississippi in the 1980s, and there were stark racial divides then. There were norms and cultural divides that fueled the complexities of this trial. There's a quote that Corvette says on page 102. It says culture consists of all of the beliefs, behaviors, and products common to members of a particular group. Norms are the behavioral expectations shaped by the majority of the individuals residing in the country. And so there were cultural norms. There was a culture there that it was unspoken. It was so consistent that it was unspoken that you didn't have to continue to speak on it. It was just the norm that African Americans stayed on their side of town and only did certain things, and the white people in that town in that time went wherever they wanted to go, and they did whatever they wanted to do. And so the norm was men would rape women back then on some sort of a regular basis, and they would not be prosecuted. And so this is the controversy of this film. So in conclusion, my four main characters in the film was Carl Lee, played by Samuel L. Jackson, Jake Tyler, played by Matthew McConaughey, Rufus Buckley, played by Kevin Spacey, and Sandra Bullock played Ellen Rourke. And I'm going to bring out the personality and behavioral components of the film, communication, how they communicated, what were the different communication styles, and how did they do that? What were the conflict management? How did they manage conflict? What were their steps? What was their conflict management style? The negotiation process. What were their components? What were the things they did through negotiations? How did they show their leadership? And then the ethical and Christ-centered worldview in other than the one that I mentioned. So this is my presentation, and thank you very much.